Do you ever feel like you don't have enough time to get things done as a jungler? Your teammates expect nothing less from you than to kill dragon, gank every lane all the time, level gap the enemy jungler, and of course get Rift Herald, but leave lanes so they can soak the tower plates. While the best solution for a jungler is to full mute all, we do know for a fact that every jungler below Diamond wastes a lot of time in the jungle by clearing camps inefficiently. To illustrate this, we sent a few of our SkillCapped subscribers ranging from Silver to Platinum to full clear on the following champions: Lee Sin, Elise, and Graves. While a full clear isn't necessarily what they'd usually do in a real game, we wanted to test their clear times compared to a challenger jungler to find out how much time goes to waste. The results may shock you. On average, some clears were done in as much as 30 seconds slower than the challenger player while doing the exact same clear. So it's safe to say, if you play jungle and want to be there in time for that gank, then this guide is for you. And we promise, we have some insane tips that will seriously improve your jungle clear speed that you won't have heard anywhere else. So, let's get started. First, the good news for noobs is that jungle has been reworked in Season 11 to simplify your jungle clear. Before, the difference between an experienced jungler and a complete beginner was truly massive. In fact, we made a similar guide to this in Season 10, where the differences between low and high elo jungle clears were even greater than today. Things like Gromp having an attack speed buff, Blue taking more magic damage, Red taking more physical damage, and so on has all gone away. On top of that, camps deal less damage and move more quickly, making kiting less effective than it was before. With all that said, you may believe that there's not much to learn about efficient jungle clears, but this is wrong, and there is still a huge skill gap between low elo versus high elo jungle clears. There are now mainly 3 main skills you will need to master in order to clear like a challenger, which we'll teach you in today's guide: Leashing, maximizing camp damage, and playing with patience. Starting with Leashing. The skill required to master Leashing is understanding the maximum range you can drag a camp before it resets to its starting position. Once you master the skill, you can use it to execute some pretty insane tricks that are actually useful, which we'll teach you in just a moment. For now, let's talk about why Leashing is so important to master for your jungle clear. Leashing is knowing the max range you can drag a camp without it continuing to lose patience. We'll talk a lot more about how patience works near the end of the guide, but the idea here is that you kill the camp at its max range while moving towards your next camp. As a quick reminder, these are the very significant differences in the clear times between our low elo players and the challenger, despite jungle clearing becoming much simpler. The main determining factor as to why this happens is how poorly low elo players leash camps compared to challenger players during their clear. As for how to leash, that's easy as long as you know the ranges for where you should be dragging your camps to. All you have to do is kill as you kite the camp to the max range you can drag it to before it starts losing patience. Between all the jungle clear submissions we went through, it was by far the biggest culprit slowing down people's clears. For example, here's a gold Graves E-ing towards the raptor camp, even though he should be dragging the raptors down toward the red buff to finish killing them. Or how this silver Elise doesn't drag Gromp towards wolves as she's finishing it off. It's made much clearer by a comparison of where each player ended as they cleared the camp. Notice how much further the challenger is compared to everyone else, not only in where he finishes wolves at 229 compared to everyone else at 229. This is obviously a huge deal, and our Graves players are only done clearing half of the jungle so far. So as a quick reference for your initial clear, these are some of the max distances you can drag each camp. For example, you can drag Blue Lagoon to about here near Gromp, Gromp to about here towards wolves, wolves to about here towards raptors, raptors to about here next to red, and so on. Of course, these aren't the only spots you need to learn when it comes to leashing. Those are only useful if you're going from camp to camp. There's plenty of other ranges you need to know, such as how far you can drag Blue if you plan on going into the river. But not to worry, over at SkillCapped, we have a dedicated guide to show you the optimal leashes you can do for any scenario. And it doesn't stop there. We also have a guide that shows you exactly how to clear like a challenger for every jungle champion. Our challengers teach you all of the efficient champion-specific tricks, and we also give you benchmarks to aim for from camp to camp, so you can truly learn how to clear like a challenger. Let's quickly listen in.
128 3/4 of a second, just before it hits 129, and then you're going to turn with 2 auto attacks, and then Cougar Form auto Q.
So be sure to head over to SkillCapped after this. We also have a special discount link in the description below that you'll want to use. Anyway, we've now covered the first of the 3 skills we're teaching today, leashing. As promised, let's talk some tricks you can pull off with this knowledge. We've already teased what you can do with Rift Herald, but here's why it can be so impactful. Yes, doing the Rift Herald in a brush can be sneaky and cool, but more importantly, it can save you valuable vision denial. Control wards are a lot less useful in the Herald Pit, whereas a control ward in this brush gives you both great vision and vision denial at the same time, even after the Herald is taken. It's not the only important camp you can drag to a sneaky brush either. Both blue buff and red can be dragged to very unsuspecting brushes near them. It's a bit hard to explain this, so here's a quick POV explanation to show you why it can be so important to have this trick up your sleeve in your own games.
Okay, so the way this was explained to me is, let's say I suspect I'm being invaded, so I come in, I see my red is still up because of the dot, so what do I instinctively do? I check this brush. Oh, maybe he's kiting it up here? No? What's going on? So you're confused the whole time? When the enemy jungler was just doing it in this brush, and no one's gonna suspect this, ever.
That value extends to invading the enemy blue buff as well. These two brushes are the last thing you expect when your buff is being stolen. We do have to warn you that replicating killing the buff in the brush is a bit tricky. Two players who had no idea how to do it resulted in a montage of fails trying to set that prior example up. Luckily for you, our expert junglers know exactly what to show you to make sure you never fail this setup. What you want to do is kite the buff towards into the brush, allow it to come inside, and then quickly move right beside it. It's basically on its max leash range in this area, so you really need to move back up to it as quickly as you possibly can once it gets inside. Moving on to the second skill you need to master, maximizing camp damage. Here, you'll learn to maximize your damage to each camp. You shouldn't need to be sold that killing camps more quickly will help your clear speed, but you may find yourself surprised at just how slow you're currently killing camps due to poor technique. Starting with one of the most common fails, junglers tend to not maximize the burn damage from their jungle item. Every time you auto-attack, you apply a burn effect that lasts for 5 seconds. Players we see not utilize this correctly are on primarily single target based champions, like from old habits not dying based on the old jungle items, Talisman and Machete. In the past, single target champions would be more incentivized to focus all their damage onto a single monster, but now that the Talisman burn is on the jungle item by default, all junglers really need to learn how to maximize the damage they do with it. Here's an example of it being done poorly. This Silver Lee focused down one wolf at a time. With 3 camps here, the Lee is missing 3 times the burn damage by not applying it to all the wolves at the same time. Whereas our expert is clearly very focused on this. Initially, as an Elise, her W will apply Talisman Burn to all the wolves. During that time, the expert focused the big wolf. But after 5 seconds had passed, notice how Elise immediately autos each of the wolves once before going back to killing the big one. That reapplication of the burn got the small wolves low enough to where the next W cast finished them off along with the burn. By maximizing the burn damage done, Elise only had to auto the little wolves once to kill them off completely. It should go without saying that this concept also applies to other camps, such as the Raptors. Try and place the burns on all of them, regardless of what champion you're playing, and your clear speed should speed up. Knowing this, let's put your jungle knowledge to the test. If you were going to kill the Krug camp, in what order would you focus all the Krugs down? It's best to always focus the big Krug down first so it splits into more targets for you to spread your burn damage on. The difference is huge here, with our Silver Elise taking 28 seconds to kill Krugs due to not focusing down the big one first. Whereas a Challenger breezes through it in just 21 seconds thanks to spreading the burn damage on multiple targets earlier. A final tip based on the burn we don't see used often enough is actually waiting for the red and blue buffs to tick down to before using Smite to finish them off. A long time ago, Riot made it so that jungle items can't actually kill the buff camps to make leashing blue for your mid laner easier. Accidentally taking blue buff is something I'll dearly miss. To work around this, you can preserve an auto attack just by letting the burn get it into Smite range and then using Smite. If you don't do this, you will waste a precious auto attack's worth of time, a mistake most junglers make all the time. The only other non-champion specific way in which you can maximize damage is on Scuttle. In case you don't know, you always want to begin with Smite on the Scuttle Crab. What this does is immediately break its shield while also doing Smite damage to the crab as well. You're basically doubling the value with your Smite by starting with it. It should go without saying that if you're being contested for it, that you should obviously not do this, as you'd need Smite to secure the crab in those cases. Otherwise, Riot has simplified the jungle so much that there really aren't many other ways to maximize damage on camps outside of champion-specific interactions, which again, we cover all the champion stuff in depth for each camp for every jungler with our clear course. We're finally at the biggest thing that trips jungle clears up and what many players are often too scared to play around: camp patience. You'll often see your favorite streamer or high elo player playing around it all the time, but then it can feel daunting attempting it in your own games since you don't want to look silly letting a camp reset. The main goal of playing around patience is to drag the camp you're clearing to its maximum leash range while kiting towards your next camp. Then you keep walking past the max, which then gives you about 4 seconds to kill it before it resets. Not to worry, as once you actually understand how it works, you'll find playing around it to be a breeze. So let's break it down. The very first thing to know is that a camp's patience range is not a perfect zone around them. What determines when a camp will lose patience is how far it has actually walked away from its starting location. For example, the wolf camp can't even be dragged that far around its own pit, as the actual distance the wolves have to travel is quite long. Next is knowing how patience actually falls off. Simply put, each camp has 7 bars of patience. The camp will not lose patience if you're inside its leash radius, but if you're outside of it, then the camp will gradually lose 1 tick of patience. The whole process of losing 7 bars of patience is about 4 seconds. Before continuing, there are some other things that can either cause a camp to lose patience faster or delay it from occurring. Each time the camp is forced to switch aggro, then it will lose a bar of patience. It's unlikely that ever causes a camp to reset, but watch out for those pesky Heimer and Zyra leashes. And that's all the relevant information you need to know. As for how to play around it, here's some quick tips to make you feel like you're clearing like a challenger. First up is a great tip for beginner junglers who haven't gotten their exact route perfectly memorized. Left-click the camp so that you can see exactly how much health it has remaining on the top left. When not doing the buffs, which show their remaining health on the top of the monster, this can really help you out when estimating your damage. Next, you'll want to think about how much DPS you can reliably output within 4 seconds of leaving its max leash range. You'll need to actively track how much damage your spells and auto attacks are doing as you're killing the monster. There's a reason the government made you take math class. It was all so you could play around patience. If you think your next rotation of autos and spells within 4 seconds will finish off the camp, then you can just kite it even further as you go to your next camp. We'd recommend playing this a bit safe as you get comfortable doing this. You're not in the World Championships. Don't reset your camp in a ranked game just to get an extra 0.5 seconds faster and you're clear. A final neat tip for clearing your jungle is paying close attention to how much burn damage your jungle item does. The jungle item burn ticks once per second for 5 seconds. If the jungle monster would die to 4 ticks of burn damage, then you can just leave it, since it takes 4 seconds to lose its total patience. Alright guys, remember to check out our jungle clear course over at SkillCapped if you want to learn all of the champion tricks and benchmarks to hit so you can truly clear like a challenger. Use the discount link below, and remember, we have a money-back guarantee, so there's literally no risk. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.